I've just this second finished recording my Napalm Death album ranking video, and I was just about to finish when I actually discovered on Loudwire they've just put out a list for 10 metal bands whose third album is their best. Now, I had a quick scour through, and I was actually a bit embarrassed to find that there's some of these albums that I've, well, not necessarily that I don't know the albums, but I don't know the full discography of some of these bands. However, as I carried on scrolling down, they also had 10 metal bands whose second album was their best. So I figured between the two lists, I've actually got a decent amount here to talk about, and some, quite frankly, easy content. We're going to go through this and see what I think, whether I agree with it, what I have to say about it, and also it could be that there's some bands that I need to check out. But anyway, let's go through the list. I just thought this would be quite a fun one to do. So first on the list we have, hang on, carry on down, where was it? Ah, yeah. So Deftones with White Pony. In fact, let me get this up on Spotify as well. Is this their best album? It's difficult to disagree. For me, I think Around the Fur will always be the album that I keep returning to, but it's hard to disagree with this one. I mean, we've got Back to School, such a great song, Digital Bath, Knife Party, Passenger, Change in the House of Flies. I mean, for that song alone, that's such an amazing track. As I said, I personally would probably go for Around the Fur, but I think we can let this one pass, and that's fine. And then we move on to Rivers of Nihil, is it? I'm not sure, with Where Owls Know My Name from 2018. This is one of those bands, unfortunately, I don't know enough about their entire discography. I have listened to this album, and this is a banger of an album, incredible album, kind of progressive death metal stylings in there. I can't really comment on this one too much. I love this album. I have heard some of their stuff, but I'm not familiar enough with their full discography. So Slayer, Rain in Blood. Well, this is quite a cliched answer, but I mean, it is really. I mean, not only is it the peak of the, I mean, I do love South of Heaven and Seasons in the Abyss. They're fantastic. Hell Awaits is great. I do like some of the later stuff as well. I think there's some great stuff on Diabolus, even though people hate it. Divine Intervention is an incredibly, criminally underrated album. People need to wake up to that album. Some of their latest stuff has got some good stuff on. Not only is this an incredible Slayer album, but this is like the pinnacle of thrash metal. Not only is it the pinnacle of thrash metal, this is also kind of the start of death metal. You know, there's so many of the early death metal bands that you hear, they're basically taking what Slayer were doing on this album and kind of upping it. So I think that's fair. I think that's fair. You got to go with that, really. On to the next one. Queensrÿche. Again, this is another one of those ones. I'm not a huge Queensrÿche fan. I do enjoy this album. It is great. It's the album that so many people mention. It is seen by so many as their masterpiece. It is a great album, even though it's not necessarily the sort of style of music that I really go for. But yeah, I could totally see this being their best. Next up, we have Tesseract with Polaris. I would probably agree with this one. I did do a review of, what was their album, 2018? Sonder. That was a great album as well. Their new album's a pretty great album, but I would say that, yeah, I probably agree that Polaris is one of their better albums. Full of genty goodness and atmospheric, kind of more ambient textures to what they do. Yeah, I'd probably go with that. Next up we have, I think the band is called Language and the album is called The Contortionist. I've never heard this band, which is, as a reviewer of metal and all things heavy, that's quite embarrassing. Very shimmery, kind of ambient sounding guitars, very progressive sounding, not dissimilar to Tesseract in some ways, but far less gent. If you've heard of Language, well, you know, the band, leave a comment. Is this a great band to check out? I'm embarrassed to say that I've not heard them. But yeah, from what little I've gone through here, sounds pretty damn impressive. Iron Maiden, Number of the Beast, another quite cliched one. I'm not sure I agree with this, actually. I think this album is a little bit... Let me just get up the discography. In many ways, I think that this is a bit of an overrated album. In some ways, that might sound a bit crazy. I've always loved the first album. I thought it was absolutely great. Killers is an amazing album. I mean, Numbers of the Beat, Invaders, Children of the Damned, The Prisoner is great. I love that drum intro. Number of the Beast, of course. I'm not actually that big a fan of that song, to be honest with you. Run to the Hills, it's hard to go against that. But I mean, Peace of Mind, Power Slave is a great album. Aces High, 2 Minutes to Midnight, Lost for Words, Back in the Village. Yeah, I'm not necessarily sure I agree with this one. I do completely understand how some people would have this. I think this is a bit of a generic answer. I think it's definitely the album that boosted the band to fame, but I'm not necessarily sure I agree with that. Like I said, I love the first two albums with Paul Di'Anno, but Power Slave and Peace of Mind are also fantastic songs. I mean, you know, Peace of Mind, you've got the Trooper for that alone. Come on, Die With Your Boots On, Flight of Icarus, Where Eagles Dare. Yeah, I'm not sure I agree with this one at all. I'm gonna say no. No, Loudwire, no. Wilderun. Is it Wilderun or Wilderun? Progressive symphonic folk death metal. This is one of those ones, again, I'm not actually familiar with the entire discography, but this is a great album. I'm pretty sure did I do something for Epicon? I want to say that I might have reviewed that on my old channel back in the day. That does seem familiar for some reason. Unfortunately, this is one that I'm not able to answer. I'm not doing very well, am I? Next up, we have Rammstein with Mutter, and I am inclined to agree with this one. This is the album that got me into the band. I'll never forget hearing Sona for the first time. You ever have those songs that you just love it immediately? As soon as you hear it the first time, it's just, you know, that song is incredible. I still love it to this day. Absolutely love that track, and it's difficult to disagree. The track listing on this is pretty much impenetrable. It's great from start to finish. Of course, you have Meinhardt's Brent to start out with, Links 234, Sonar I've already mentioned, not Du Hast is the other one. Ishville, that's the song I'm looking for. I mean, this is just, there's so many good songs on this album. It's really difficult to disagree. I mean, the first album showed promise, but there was lack. You know, their songwriting wasn't quite up to snuff. Sensuk was a great album, but again, had moments, but not great as an album. This one's fantastic. Riser is a great album as well. I do really enjoy that album. Mutter and Riser would be my top picks for Rammstein, but I think this is difficult to disagree with. I would definitely put Mutter there. And last on the list, we have Metallica with Master of Puppets. This is a difficult one for me. I completely understand why it's on there. It's quite a generic choice, but it is a fantastic album from start to finish. I mean, Orion is not just one of my favourite Metallica songs. Orion is one of my favourite songs, period. I love that song so much. It means so much to me. Ride the Lightning, though, is a fucking amazing album from start to finish as well. I mean, you've got Fight Fire with Fire, and then you've got the title track, which is amazing. For Whom the Bell Tolls, incredible. Fade to Black, one of the best ballads ever written. We've got Trapped Under Ice as a banger. Escape is way better than people give it credit for. I know it was their first stab at doing a commercial song or whatever, but it's actually a lot better than people give it credit for. Then you've got Creeping Death, all-time classic, and Call of Cthulhu, another incredible instrumental. I get it. It's difficult to disagree, but Ride the Lightning is an incredible album as well. And Justice for All is also an incredible album. I wouldn't put it as their best, because it's not a perfect album. There are songs on there that I'm not so keen on. It is a bit, overdone, the track lengths on some of them. But as much as I hate to say it, I guess I agree, but Ride the Lightning is right up there with it in my eyes. Ride the Lightning and Master of Puppets kind of go together, and Ride the Lightning is an incredible album. I might actually go Ride the Lightning, you know what I mean? That's the end of the list of third albums. So now we're going to get into the 10 albums whose second album is their best. Agalloch. So I'm going to be quite honest with you, I've never actually listened to this band. Black metal is something that I've not gotten into quite as much. So this is one that I'm going to have to check out. Moving on to Slipknot with Iowa. Okay, now this is another one that's difficult to go against, but I'm not sure I agree. I still always have a real fondness for the debut. It's just See, technically this would actually be the third album as well. To be fair, it does say there as well, if you consider that as a demo, then many people would see this as their second LP. I think that, yeah, that's fair enough. I think that it's not a good album, is it? The first one, Mate, Feed, Kill, Repeat. I mean, it's difficult to disagree. You've got some pretty goddamn good bangers on here. The opening track, once you get past the prelude, you've got People Equal Shit, which is easily one of their best songs ever. Disaster Pieces, of course, the Heretic Anthem. Gently, Left Behind. I remember that single just being played so many times on MTV2 at the time. It was all over the place, this album. Yeah, I think there's an argument for it. I still go for the debut. There's something very special about that. I remember hearing that album just being blown away, like, what the fuck is this? But, yeah, I could see why people would have this as their choice. Black Sabbath, Paranoid. For me, this is no. As much as I love this album, there are some fantastic songs on this. Of course, you got the title track itself, Planet Caravan. War Pigs is an incredible song. Electric Funeral, Iron Man, of course. I think maybe it's because, Paranoid is one of those songs that I could quite happily never hear again. That's not to say I think it's a bad song. It's like Enter Sandman. I've heard it so many times now. It's like, okay, I don't need to hear it again. Master of Reality has always been my favourite, followed closely by Vol 4. Yeah, I don't agree with this one at all. So, fantastic album nonetheless, but yeah, not for me. Moving on to System of a Down with Toxicity. This is another one that's difficult to disagree with. Chop Suey was my first exposure to this band, and that song still blows my mind. The outro to that piece, there's so much going on in the background, so many little things. I remember hearing it on TV, on MTV2, and then I bought the CD and hearing it through headphones, and you hear all these other little bits and pieces going on in the background of the song. I was absolutely blown away by it. This is kind of a thrash album as well. A lot of people put System of a Down in the nu metal category. This is heavy as hell. This is really, there's real thrash elements on this album. I think this is difficult to disagree with. The first album is a great album. I enjoy that a lot. Still, this album actually has some really good stuff on it. And then, of course, we've got, was it Mesmerize and Hypnotize? Can't remember the order. And there was some fantastic stuff on those ones, but I think this is difficult to disagree with. I would say Toxicity is their best album. It's pretty much perfect from start to finish. Production on it is sensational as well. It just sounds heavy as all hell. Great album. Alice in Chains, Dirt. Yeah, I mean, I love all of Alice in Chains' music. I don't think they've got a bad album. I love everything they're doing now as well. I still think they're a great band. But this album, this is a very special album for me. I've actually very soon got a video coming out of my favourite albums from my youth, the sort of albums that shaped me. And spoiler warning, this is on it. This is a very dark, bleak album. At the time, it was very... I remember hearing it and just being kind of depressed by the album. And sadly, that's in many ways, this album is even more difficult for me to listen to now. Because of my own personal experiences and people I've known who are sadly no longer here, and the addiction side of things that's talked about in this album is very haunting. But yeah, I would agree this is their best album. There's just something very special about this album. They were just firing on all cylinders. Incredible album. Fear Factory, Demanufacture. I personally too would agree with this. I love the first album. Soul of a New Machine, very much a death metal album. I didn't like it at the time, but it's grown on me. I love that album a lot. And Obsolete is a fantastic album, without a doubt. Many people know that. I also think Mechanize is a great album as well. But yeah, I would agree that Demanufacture is their best album. Everything about this album is just incredible. Dino Cazares and Raymond Herrera don't get enough credit for their real those syncopated riffs. They're stopped, the guitar and the drums all syncing up. I believe that Dino got the idea for Fear Factory from the Machine Gun section in Metallica's One. It's like, well, what if you just did an entire album doing that sort of a thing? And I don't think he gets enough credit. You hear about bands like Meshuggah getting loads of credit, but, you know, Fear Factory, it's easy to dismiss them nowadays as being quite generic, but they were way ahead of their time and nobody had ever heard anything like this. I would agree with this 100%. It's an incredible album. And yeah, they never quite topped it, in my opinion. I do enjoy many of their other albums, but yeah, I would say this is their best. Trivium, Ascendancy. I'm not sure I would agree with that, actually. I'm not a huge Trivium fan. I have seen them live, and they definitely earned my respect. They were opening for Slayer, and they got pelted by the crowd. The crowd detested them, and they did not back down. They carried on. They gave it their all. They played their hearts out. They gave it 110%. I definitely respected them for that, but yeah, I'm not a huge fan of them. I did listen to this album, the first album. There's definitely some bangers on this. But I mean, their latest album, was it In the Court of the Dragon? That's a great album, which I'd probably put ahead of this. There's great tracks on this without a shadow of a doubt, but technically I'm not really familiar enough with their discography to really say about this one, but I would say no. I'm not sure I do agree with that. I think they've got better albums than this. Next up we have Emperor with Anthems to the Welkin at Dusk, and I probably would I'd probably agree with this one. I mean, In the Nightside Eclipse, the first album that came out, that was a fantastic album as well. Yeah, I think I'd probably agree with this one. In the Nightside Eclipse is a great album as well, though. But I think they kind of got everything together on this. I do prefer Isan's solo stuff myself. Maybe that's blasphemy to say, I don't know. But Green Carnation up next. More sort of progressive rock, I guess. This is another one I'm not hugely familiar with their entire discography, but I have heard this album and I do enjoy it. But unfortunately I can't really say on that one, so leave your comments on that one. This next one I definitely have an opinion on. Strapping Young Lad, City. This is one of my favourite albums of all time. I listened to this album so much when it came out. Blew my mind, never heard anything like it before. It genuinely felt like it did something to my brain. I would agree with this, although I think there are many of his, there are lots of other Strapping Young Lad albums which are just as well, which are nearly as good, but there was something very special about this album. It's just crazy. I love everything about this album. The follow-up, the self-titled, I couldn't stand when it first came out because I guess I was looking for City Part 2, and you know, the next album is pretty much a death metal album, which I love now. Alien is close behind City. It's a very good album. But yeah, I think there's no way of denying it. City is the best Strapping Young Lad album. It's just an incredible album. I adore this one. Oh, and that's it. Well, there you go. A bit of an abrupt ending. I thought we had more there to go. But yeah, let me know in the comments what you think. Do you agree? Do you not agree? Let me know about the ones that I don't really know too much about, whether I should be checking them out or not, what your opinions is of those. I just thought this was quite a fun video to do. And it's the sort of thing I'd like to do more of in the future. It's just, it's nice to see other people's opinions and whether I agree with them or not. So leave your comments. At the time of recording this, my next video is going to be probably my Napalm Death ranking. Although having said that, I also have the albums of my youth video thing. I'm going on too much anyway. There'll be other videos. Check it out and subscribe if you haven't already. If you don't want to, I don't blame you. Catch you later.